at work right there, and she's going to let them know when they are almost near their time. And then we have somebody who's going to do a rebuttal for 2 minutes, no, for 3 minutes. And then we have somebody who's going to close for another 2 minutes. And after that, we're going to go to the second QR code, and we're going to show you the results. And we'd like to see what you think now, and then what you think later. So please scan the code to let us know before, and then the code to let us know after. Timekeeper? All good? Excellent. Actually, toss is fine. Or should I just speak? Okay, there you go. Okay, so the movement starts when we wait.
Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Happy Africa Day. Perfect. My name is Faith. I would like to introduce my team, Hope and Kindness. So we're a dream team. And we're here to present the motion that African trade integration is absolutely essential for continental development. Here are just some key numbers to get you started. 263 million. That's the number of young people that the African Development Bank estimates will lack an economic stance by 2025. 30 million. That's the number of people that are estimated to be lifted out of extreme poverty by the full implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. 1 billion. That's the potential market size to be captured on this continent in a single African market. And finally, 450 billion US dollars. That's the potential income boost to Africa by 2035 under the African Continental Free Trade Area. If those numbers are attractive to you, then pay very close attention to what I'm about to say next. In 2018, all 54 African heads of state agreed and signed the African Continental Free Trade Area. That was a shock to me because hardly anything unites this continent. And so we said that when our heads of state get together, all old men, we wonder what they actually do. This is one good thing they actually did, and I couldn't be proud of them for having done this. So give them a round of applause. So let's set the stage. Under this free trade area, we're not just talking about the trade of goods. We're talking about the trade of services, the trade of investment, the trade of e-commerce, the trade of intellectual property. There are lots of benefits to this agreement. Very often we focus exclusively on trade, and that's a myopic way of looking at what we're trying to do. Now I expect my friends on this side to eventually tell us this is a bad idea, and the rest of the world is beginning to move away from global trade. Well, guess what? The countries that are arguing right now against global trade are those who have profited historically from trade and who have developed the kind of trade policies that have disadvantaged Africa, now telling us that this is not how to go. So I hope we'll listen to the people who have disenfranchised us in the past and listen to our own experts who understand what trade can do for us. So let me set the stage again for how poorly Africa has traded so far and why this is absolutely essential. Currently, the volume of intra-Africa trade sits at about 17%. Compared with Europe, that's 69%. Compared with Asia, that's 59%. Compared with North America, that's 31%. We are sitting far below the value of the rest of the continent, so why should we focus absolutely on this? Under this free trade area agreement, we will stimulate and accelerate the growth of every single sector on the continent, because once you boost your economies and you begin to trade with others, your infrastructure begins to grow with that, and every other economic index begins to follow suit as well. Secondly, we're going to reduce reliance on commodities on the continent. Right now, we know how reliant we are on oil and other renewable indices of growth and development. So we're going to reduce our reliance on commodities in favor of high quality goods and processed services. Thirdly, we're going to boost our resilience against global shocks, like the war in Ukraine, which made it difficult for us to access wheat on parts of the continent. We require an entire UN resolution to reduce the blockade on the high seas. So by boosting intra-Africa trade, we boost our own resilience against global shocks. And finally here, we're going to stimulate knowledge transfer on the continent. The better our economies, the better our research capacity, and the much stronger we're going to be. Those who disagree with this are those who have profited the most in the status quo. The same countries across the world that reduce our potential to help ourselves and would rather give us a little bit of money back to us in terms of foreign aid. We reject that. We grow our economies. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. We are on the opposing side of this motion. And to begin, I would like to remind you all that the new trade agreement is fundamentally against the idea of tariffs. And I just thought it was interesting to look at history and sort of compare what happened in the US, and Germany, and even the East Asian countries, how they strategically continue to use tariffs to foster industrialization. So what they did with their tariffs was they invested into infant industries, strategic ones, high-value added ones, and this allowed these industries to grow. And once the country became industrialized enough and the economies were strong enough, then they removed the tariffs and began to trade freely. So if we are removing tariffs too soon, we are taking away the ladder for these infant industries to grow. Another point worth mentioning, also related to this infant industry situation, is that a lot of smaller countries in Africa right now are really starting out to progress in the infant industry sectors. And then the bigger countries are already more established when it comes to higher value-added industries. So what will happen is if we free the trade between these countries too soon, then unfortunately what we see is that there will be sort of powerhouse countries like Kenya in the east, South Africa in the south, and the west, that will just export these manufactured goods to these smaller countries, limiting them from actually growing these high value added sectors. Finally, I just wanted to remind you that when we were colonized, our economies were, and our infrastructure was set up in a way to foster export to the West, or like to the outside. So now, if we want to trade within Africa, we need to really have the infrastructure that will allow us, right? And for that, we need money. And that being said, we cannot completely ignore the importance of still exporting to wealthier countries, because they will be the ones who will buy the more expensive goods, the manufactured goods. We cannot necessarily sell these expensive goods to our neighbors who cannot necessarily afford it yet. So it's important to kind of reinvest that money that we gain from the wealthier countries who buy our products into our own economies and into our infrastructure to facilitate the trade. So all of that being said, I think it's important to understand that if we want to gain the benefits that this trade agreement offers, there are certain steps which need to be fulfilled. And until those steps are not fulfilled, we cannot really be as optimistic about this integration.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Hope and I'm just going to talk about some of the points that she has raised. The first thing you said was about tariffs. That removal of tariffs is going to lead to loss of revenue for African countries. But statistics and research has shown that removal of these tariffs will increase the volume of trade in Africa by 50 billion, from 50 billion to about 70 billion by 2040. In fact, it will increase the volume of trade between African countries. We know that tariffs are measures that obstruct trade, and so removing it is going to really boost the trade for African countries. And secondly, you talked about infant industry, how the industries in Africa, they're just starting out, and so they need protection. I argue that we can actually pool resources together, we can pool manpower together, we can put knowledge together to grow these infant industries. Most of Africa, we are shipping commodities to the West. And according to Previch's argument, on the long run, primary commodities, their cost becomes low on the long run. So even if we continue trading on primary commodities, we're going to lose from global trade. And that brings me to the point of the position of Africa. We all know Tandika, and his argument has always been that we should improve the position of Africa in the global market. And a good way to improve Africa's trading position is to ensure that we integrate, we pull resources together. And we're not just talking about growth, we're talking about development. It means that socioeconomic indicators are things we're also looking at. And so improving our trade position means bringing together all of those infant industries, pulling the knowledge together, pulling our resources together. All these transfers will lead to better outcomes for Africa. And then you talked about colonialism. I agree with you. We must recognize that upon the structures that we are building on, it's really colonial. All of our efforts at decolonialism means that we're going to be building on colonial structures. But we must not forget that all efforts at decolonialism of Africa must not stop at our mindsets or knowledge. It must go far to trade. And so if we must decolonize Africa, we must start with trade. And so if we can't trade between ourselves, if we can't improve our lives, how then can we have a better position in the global economy? How then can we speak with one voice? And if you look at the WTO, the Doha round, why it hasn't been ratified up till now or presumed dead is because African countries came together to seek for a better position. So integration in trade, integration in every aspect is something that Africa will definitely benefit from. Thank you very much.
Good evening, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mohammed. I'm so happy to be here. I think the title presented is very apt, Africa Trades. So it basically tells us there's already trade in Africa. And as correctly mentioned, it's very low, around 16%, right? That's against 70% in Europe, around 60% in Latin America. But what's the reason? It's not integration. So even if you integrate the whole of Africa, demolish all the borders, you will not have enough trade in Africa. The major reason why we have low productivity is because we are basically producing primary commodities. And we are producing primary commodities because our economies are poor. And the only way we can become rich is in trade with rich countries with poorer neighbors. So if you are advocating for more trade with our neighbors that are also producing primary commodities just like us, then that's going to mean the cycle of poverty. Just to give you a bit of a statistic, the entire GDP of Chad, for example, is around $2 billion. That is 10% of the GDP of Lagos. So if you are saying you are going to do more trade between Nigeria and Chad to develop the economy, you are just going to get the rich richer in Lagos and Nigeria. In fact, for Africa, for Chad and Lagos. So what we basically need is to learn from history. If you look at countries like China, like the United States, we mentioned how they benefit from global trade. And that actually goes against the agreement, because we are advocating for more trade with the international community, which is what they did. You are advocating for more trade with domestic African countries. So if we trade with the richest countries of the world, top GDP, like Africa, like the United States, like China, that is how we only be able, that's the only way we'll be able to generate enough capital to develop our infrastructure. And without infrastructure, there will never be a structural transformation for our economy. Because if you look at the United States, for example, the richest cities are in the coastal areas, the New York, for example, the Los Angeles. And they were developed specifically with the view of trading with the world, not trading domestically with the United States. But China, most of the Chinese real infrastructure was built in the last 20 years after China has declared become a prosperous country. So you can't focus on trading with a poor neighbor or poor environment when you have rich people all over the world. And just to go beyond that, look at the governance structure in Africa. Just imagine a common village in Africa and then an Africa integration. How would governance work? How would they get public services? Also, if you look at the history, for example, how can we forget our history? The Bono Empire, the Ashanti Empire, the Korean Empire. How can you just launch that and see if you all forget about our history and just become a single integrated environment? That is not realistic, that is not viable, that is not practical, and that is not what Africa needs to move forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have in a position strongly considering the fragmentation within the African geopolitical context, talking about how we still need the role of terrorists in economic development, talking about how trade integration is going to increase dependence burden on smaller states. But guess what? I'm glad they showed up today to celebrate Africa Day. And by Africa Day, the thing was clear, unity in our diversity, talking about Ubuntu. Ubuntu, it's about humanity to others. And this is I am because of who and what we all are. This is only for the, not for the social aspect. It's also for the economic aspect. So I'm wondering how we are going to economically develop the continent without the role of trade. And I'm sure we are all seated here from diverse places for a reason, to celebrate this Ubuntu, right? Thanks for coming to celebrate it. If you look back, Africa trade integration, like we said, it's going to boost our economic activities amongst ourselves. And this is how we shall be able to build our supply chain. This is how we shall be able to stimulate investments. You all know that Africa currently is having a very vibrant and young population. And guess what? Statistics say by 2050, we shall have the largest number of youth in the whole world. And 50% of these will be under 25 years. But look at the youth today. When you reach out to them, how do they identify themselves? They'll talk about unemployment because they are jobless. And trade is the key generator and engine for job creation. I hope you agree with me. We did remind you about global resilience. You saw what happened during COVID-19, where we couldn't even access vaccines just because of the status of our pharmaceutical industry. But look at if we can tap into our comparative advantage, how far we can go. Now, it thinks about development being in the short term, but for us, trade integration, we are looking at it as a long-term thing whereby we must work on our trade environment. We are looking at trade integration not as a sprint, which we are on, of moving from point A to B, that by tomorrow we just think about trade or the results we need to get, they should be clear. No. As a continent, we still have a long way to go in terms of restructuring our trade environment, working around how we reduce the barriers and the non-tariff barriers to position ourselves globally. I see I'm out of time, but just to sum up, I will begin with a quote by Jim Rohn. It says, if you are not willing to risk the unusual, you will settle for the ordinary. And as the proposition side, we are not willing to settle for the ordinary. We believe that Africa is ready to take the risk, to act with urgency, and be responsible. So we believe Africa trade integration is necessary. And now we bounce it back to you. Whether you want us to continue to depend on the same old ways that drain us of our economic value, or you want us to progress. Thank you.
Okay, oh, brilliant. I honestly think Joyce has been very naughty to give us today, African Day, to fight against this motion. I love everything you guys have said, I really do. And I actually think trade's probably a good thing. But it is about timing and getting it right. And Toyson knows that I would always say yes to coming and embarrassing myself and losing, perhaps losing this debate, even making the white guy who was asked to speak, please. But I'm only doing it to promote my book. I mean, that too. Right, so, do we think this trade area is a beautiful symbol of African unity? Yes. Do we think it's fantastic to see the African Union as a group come together in this way? Yes. But when it comes to, does it make you rich? Does it actually increase trade? The answer is no. It is, unfortunately, Asia or Europe or North America that trades 50 to 70% with each other. Intra-regional trade is very, very hard. But it's Latin America, 10 to 20%. The Gulf countries, 10 to 20%. And Africa, 10 to 20% that don't trade with each other. Is that because of free trade? No, because the Gulf countries, they have free trade. In Asia, they don't have free trade. It's 50% intra-regional trade in Asia, but only 15% in the Gulf. Why? Because Asia, Europe, and States have industrialized, and Latin America not so much, and the Gulf not at all, and Africa not yet. Most. So trade is not what industrialization creates trade, not the other way around. And we've seen this time and time again. The only country that wanted free trade in the 19th century was Britain. Why? Because they were the dominant economic power. They wanted everyone to do free trade. The Germans said, "Nein, dirty British, we will do this our own way." That's my best German accent. 1 minute. And they stole the British industrial secrets, got British workers to come to Germany, they built up an industry behind tariffs. So did the French. And they got rich. They industrialized. The only reason Europe ever got free trade wasn't to get richer, it was to stop the Germans invading France, which they just did all the time. Every 20 years they got forward, invaded France again. It wasn't about getting rich. Did China get rich on free trade? Well, it got rich exporting to rich countries, but not with free trade the rest of Asia. Japan, protectionist, so protectionist in the 1980s that Reagan was banging in with the tariffs on Japan every year. Didn't stop Japan getting richer actually, but it wasn't a free trading nation. And we don't need free trade to see successes in Africa. We've already got them. Mauritius is the second richest country in Africa. Is it because it's got a 1.4 billion people to trade with? No, it's got 2 million. But it's got rich by exporting to the rest of the world. Morocco's done the same. And that's this isn't the only way that we're going to see Africa get rich. And the proposition is this the only way Africa's going to get rich? I don't think so. It'll be education, it'll be human capital, it'll be you. Thank you very much.
Right, can we give it up for them again if you enjoyed that? Brilliant, brilliant. Well, this was amazing. I think it's perfect today on the back of the launch of our Africa Trade that we had this conversation, to be honest. Now it's up to you. So we're going to put you guys on the spot. You know what to do. We're going to have the next QR code, and you can let these guys know how you feel. If you're leaning towards our friend here, you know the motion to vote for. If you're leaning towards our lovely friends here, you know which one to vote for. And I will totally read the votes for you in a second. So keep voting, but while we're doing that, I will tell you what you thought before you heard the debate. Remember what the instructions were? You are voting based on have you been persuaded, not so much about what you know about African free trade, right? So when you came in here, this is what you said. Very surprising. We had, for the pre-debate poll, we had 52 votes. Can someone guess what it was? Oh, no. I didn't make this up. 50-50. I did not make that up. So we have 50% for and 50% against. That is so weird. And we had 50, somebody has voted extra. Somebody else stuck in the boat. So now we have, okay, this is not going to be fair now. Oh, it's now moved. Guys, stop changing your votes. Alright, stop. Stop with the free debate votes. Don't vote anymore. We have against 53 and for 47%. So that's what we have. Okay, this is the moment of truth. Let's see what you say for the post-debate. 47, any last votes? Any last votes? Put it in there now. 48. Let's get it up to 50, and then we have another equal split. So the result from 48 votes, wow. We have against 60% and for 40%. So, what do you guys think? How are you leading? Do you think that's fair? Show of hands? Anyone? No. So, that is the vote. We have 60% of you think that it's not the road to prosperity, and 40% of you still agree with that motion. So once again, give your hands up for our debaters. Amazing work. Thank you so much.
I'm really surprised that
Thank you everybody for participating. Now we're going to pass on to our host. Can I please encourage people